everybody. So we're excited today to talk about citizenship by investment. So I am Caoilfhionn van der Walt. I'm the managing partner of Regan Van Rooy. We're a boutique tax advisory firm, and I am based in Mauritius, where a lot of people have gotten permits to move to. And a lot of our clients ask us about getting second passports or getting citizenship by investment. So we thought we would get an expert along today to tell us all we need to know about getting a second passport, or citizenship by investment, as I suppose it's formally called. So we're thrilled to have you with us today, Lisa. Lisa Czepek is from Henley Partners. Lisa, can you give a bit of an intro to yourself and what you do at Henley Partners?
Yes, good morning, Caoilfhionn, and good morning to everyone else that's joined. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the introduction. So yes, by way of background, I am based in Cape Town. So we are a global firm at Henley Partners. We have over 60 offices around the world. I'm the managing director based in our Cape Town office. And we are responsible for the African sub-Sahara region, Caoilfhionn.
Great. So guys, we would like this to be a fairly interactive discussion. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat and we'll deal with them as we go through. And we will have a formal time for questions and answers at the end. So Lisa, could you start by giving us some detail on who should be thinking about getting a second passport? I'm from Ireland and have an Irish passport, so I've never thought about getting a second passport. But who are people or nationalities who should be thinking about this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Caoilfhionn. I mean, as you say, being Irish, you'd think you've got a great passport. And so interesting to know, a lot of people are misled to believe that a second passport or residence is actually only for those from your typical emerging market countries. However, it really is actually for anyone from any nationality. As I mentioned, we're a global firm. So we assist clients from all nationalities, from all around the globe. And in fact, one of our biggest markets at the moment is actually the US. So
I'm not surprised to hear that, Lisa. I guess
I
that's
guess
only been in the last year or so, hey?
exactly. So, I mean, we went from zero presence in the US to having, I think we've got about 7 offices in the last 12 months in the US. So, yeah, big market there, looking at European citizen residencies, for example. We've also got our office in Zurich, our office in Dubai, very busy offices as well for us. So, it is for everyone from a South African perspective. We are also a relatively busy office. And our typical clients are from, looking for a plan B, looking for ease of travel, just more mobility. And really, South Africans, I guess, who are concerned about the future of South Africa, just typically people looking for optionality. Yeah, so it really is for everyone, Caoilfhionn.
Great. And one of the things that we always tell our clients is that second passport or citizenship is separate to your tax residency. However, the US is an interesting case because in the US, if you have a US passport, you're always tax resident in the US. So I think that has also led to the growth in the last year of people just wanting to exit the US altogether. But so that's helpful to understand people who. So basically, if you're looking for a plan B or you're looking for greater optionality in terms of where you want to live, it's worth thinking about a second passport. And can you talk us through the main benefits if you have a second passport?
Absolutely, Caoilfhionn. So, I mean, there are various drivers that we see regularly, from clients that consult with us to getting a second residence or citizenship. In fact, some obtain more than one. We have clients that will do, for example, a residency program like Mauritius, which is residency only. And then in addition to that, they will do like a St. Kitts and Nevis passport. So, that would be a driver from a client's perspective of looking for a residence, somewhere to go should they want to go somewhere. But the travel benefits associated with having a passport, which Mauritius doesn't give you, so then they would do like a St. Kitts and Nevis passport with that. But, clients look at lots of different reasons for doing this, better education opportunities for their kids. Ease of travel is a big one that we see. For example, the South African passport is quite limited in terms of visa-free travel. So we have some clients that purely just invest in a second passport just to have the benefit of not having to apply for visas because they do travel regularly for business and or pleasure. Clients looking at expanding their business, looking at business opportunities, for example, across Europe and looking at a residence or citizenship in Europe to facilitate that expansion of their business, for example. So there really are a diverse range of reasons that we see clients looking to obtain a second residence or citizenship. It doesn't necessarily mean, and in fact, it doesn't, in most circumstances, doesn't mean they're looking to move or leave the country. So 95% of our South African clients don't actually leave South Africa. It's just really a plan B and having that optionality that comes with it.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think certainly Plan B is a very common phrase that South Africans use when they're thinking about particularly being able to remain in South Africa. And we also have a lot of clients who want to remain living there, but want to, for instance, set up an international structure so that if they do leave one day, they've got an easier wealth structure to pick up with. You mentioned residency by investment, particularly in Mauritius. Can you try to explain for us, because this is something I sometimes get confused with, the difference between citizenship by investment and residency by investment?
Absolutely. And this is a great question that comes up all the time and something that always, people think they understand the difference, but sometimes it helps just to clarify the actual reason, especially when it comes to going down this avenue of exploring a second residence or citizenship. So a residency ties you to one specific country. So it allows you to reside in that country, which means you can live there, you can work there, you can study there, and you're really tied to that particular country. If you had a citizenship, you would have those same benefits, but you'd have additional benefits. So, for example, residency laws can change, whereas with a citizenship, it's more definite. You've got a citizenship and you really can't lose a citizenship unless, there's a crazy reason like terrorism or, being involved in something like that. But citizenship is can't be taken away from you. And of course, the citizenship actually equates really with a passport. So with that, you get travel rights associated with that passport as well. So an interesting example and pertinent to today's discussion with you being based in Mauritius. Mauritius and Dubai are quite similar in that they both have a residency program, not a citizenship program. So they afford the investor residency rights. So with that, the investor can live there, live in Mauritius, work in Mauritius, study. The same applies with Dubai. However, they will never get a citizenship. So they will never have those citizenship rights in Mauritius or a passport for Mauritius. So there's often a little bit of a misconception around that, specifically with our South African clients looking at Mauritius. They often led to believe that, they will get a passport, but unfortunately, that's not the case, particularly with the Mauritius program. I hope that
Yeah,
helps clarify.
Yeah, I think that is helpful, and especially for South Africans, it's interesting because we have a lot of South Africans who move to Mauritius and to Dubai, and certainly what having lived here for 7 years, and I have an Irish passport, so it's not a worry for me. But I do sometimes wonder why South Africans are here, because if they're here for a job, as soon as that job is over, or if they lose their job, they have no right to remain. Their children only have right to remain as long as they're dependents. So it's quite different. And I think there is, in theory, there is a route to become a citizen in Mauritius, but in practice, there isn't. And I always tell our clients, assume you will never become a citizen. It very, very, very rarely happens. Okay, well, thanks for that context, Lisa. So, can you take us through now what, and I know these things change often, but at the moment, what are the most popular second passport or citizenship by investment routes?
Absolutely, with pleasure. So, if we can perhaps put up some pretty slides for us to look at.
I think
Um,
Kutuano has them ready to go.
Great. Then I'll just talk you through some of the options. As you mentioned, they do change. It is quite a dynamic industry, this industry of citizenship by investment. But there certainly are those that are the main ones that we've seen over the years that tend to really be the more popular ones for certain markets. So from a South African market perspective, and I guess from an African market perspective, we certainly do have some. Portugal Golden Visa would be one of them. St. Kitts and Nevis or Antigua, which is in the Caribbean. The Greece Golden Visa also, we've seen quite a big interest in of late since changes have happened in the industry, and I'll talk you through those. And the EB5 is in the US is also, as much as I've just said, Americans are looking at options to get out. There's also still a big interest in people looking to get into and invest in the US. So these are sort of the highlight ones. And I'll give you some idea. I'll talk you through each of these one by one, just in a little bit more detail, just to give the audience a bit of an understanding of how these programs work and what is required from them.
Great. And a reminder to all the attendees, if you've any questions as we go, please put them in the chat and we'll try to answer.
Absolutely. So if we look at Antigua as one of the first ones that we look at, I think we've got a slide for that. Yeah, beautiful island in the Caribbean. And this is a citizenship program, so affords the investor an actual passport. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see some of the key points of the program. So you can either invest into real estate. So it would have to be a government approved project, like an intercontinental hotel that you would be investing into. So you would invest into a unit and generate a rental return. And after 5 years, you could disinvest and you still keep the passport. So that's the one way of investing. On the screen here, you'll see the minimum requirement, which is a donation of $230,000. So you can either do a donation, which would be a non-recoverable amount for $230,000, or you could purchase the real estate, and it's usually about $300,000. It depends on the program. There's recently been some changes in the investment amounts across the board in the Caribbean. So what are you getting? You're getting a decent ranking passport. So it's in the top 30, Antigua, for example. But in particular for South African clients, it gives you visa-free travel through the Schengen area and also into the UK. So a lot of clients are looking for that travel flexibility. And of course, it allows you to spend up to 90 days at a time in the Schengen zone, for example, twice a year. So what we also see is families that have got children, grandchildren living in Europe, for example, in the Netherlands, and the grandparents are sitting here in South Africa and they want to go and visit regularly and spend, a decent amount of time with their kids and grandkids. We're seeing a lot of families looking at these Caribbean type passports to allow them that flexibility. The travel visa-free, on the right of the screen, you'll see gives you sort of visa-free travel to over 150 destinations with an Antigua passport. You've also got the ability as a main applicant to include your spouse, your dependent children under 31. So these also work very well because often families come to us, they've been thinking about this for years, and now finally they're ready to pull the trigger, but the kids are adults. And there are programs that restrict adult children from being included in a parent's application. So these Antigua and these other Caribbean options are really flexible in allowing a large amount of family members to be included. You'll
And
see you
that's
can also,
very generous, 31. I mean, I would hope I won't have dependent children by that age, but it means you can bring a very large family group and grandparents over 55. That's also a very generous age bracket.
absolutely. I mean, we've had applications where it's literally considered one family, so one investment amount, and I call it the 230,000. It does differ slightly if there's additional family members to a degree, but give or take, it's one investment for like a family of like 9 to 12 members at
Wow,
a
great.
time. There are the rules around them, but the children have to be, they can't be working, they
Yeah.
can't be married, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's it this is a very popular option that we've seen. If we can move on to the next slide, I'll talk you through the next option. So Portugal Golden Visa, I'm sure most of you have heard about that on more than one occasion, has always been very popular. It allows you access into Europe. It starts off as a residency program and it has a pathway to citizenship. So you start off getting the rights of residency, which ties you to Portugal alone. But in addition to being tied to Portugal, you also are able to travel through the Schengen zone without getting visas. So that is a great benefit. And after 5 years, you can, in theory, apply for citizenship. When I say in theory, there's a language test, you have to have held your investment, and there is a physical presence requirement of spending 7 days a year in Portugal.
Which is
So
very little, 7 days a year.
exactly, Keelan. And I mean, this is why it's so popular. So
Yeah.
all of these programs are plan Bs, as we call them, because like I say, most of our clients aren't leaving South Africa. So they really want to stay here. They know the grass is not necessarily greener on the other side to move, but they want that optionality. So they're happy to go to Portugal and spend 7 days a year on a beautiful European holiday. The Caribbean options I spoke about have no physical presence requirements, so you really don't even have to set foot there. So they're really easy to maintain these residencies and citizenships. Portugal's been an interesting one. So currently, the entry level, the minimum contribution is 250,000 euros. That would be a non-recoverable donation to a cultural heritage fund. So that's the entry level. What majority of our clients are doing is 500,000 euros into private equity, a Portuguese private equity fund. So there are lots and lots of fund options. And we would introduce the client to the different fund managers, and then they would make their own informed decision on which one to invest in. Used to be able to invest into property in Portugal, and that was a big change in the industry when that investment vehicle was taken away. So there's been a lot of noise, let's say, around the Portugal Golden Visa over the last 2 years. But the reality is the program remains open. It remains very popular for some of the reasons I've mentioned, like the 7 days only, the pathway to EU citizenship. And it really is still our number one program for the last couple of years and at the moment still.
Yeah, and you're right. There has been a lot of talk of this in the market, and I've heard people saying Portugal no longer works. But as I'm understanding, the only change is you can no longer get this permit through buying property. You rather have to invest in private equity.
Exactly. Private equity or this contribution amount. And there's also ways of setting up a business, but very complicated, requires you to move there. So the most popular is definitely the 500,000
Yeah.
into a fund. Yeah.
Okay.
And the next one I'll touch on for the purposes of just going through a few today is the Greece Golden Visa. So the Greece Golden Visa is quite similar to the Portuguese Golden Visa. It has become more popular of late because it allows you still to invest into real estate.
Yeah.
So there are those clients. I mean, some clients come to us purely by saying, I want to buy property in Europe. And I understand that by buying property in Europe, I can get a residency. So, how do I go about that? So there were options like Portugal, Malta, Montenegro. A few of these programs had the option to buy property and get your residence, but currently it's a lot more limited, and hence Greece is very popular because you only have to invest 250,000 euros into property in Greece, and you can get your residency. There are various thresholds. So 250 is the entry. That is the conversion of a commercial into a residential property. There are companies that are set up that actually do that for you. So you don't actually have to do the conversion yourself. You literally end up investing into a already converted property, and all the hassles taken away from you, which is great. Then there's a 400,000 option where you slightly limited in areas that you can buy residential property. So, for example, no Mykonos, no Athens, the real busy cities. Um, or you can invest 800,000 euros, and then you are unlimited in terms of where you purchase.
Okay.
But the benefit is you can rent your property out, Keelan. So what's great about that is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the 800,000 Mykonos and Athens. There are a lot of local Greek, um, you know, residents that aren't interested in staying in Athens. They want to stay in the sort of surrounding areas. So when we look at defining it as outlying areas, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like out in the sticks. It's still really good property investment options available. Greece doesn't require you to spend any time in Greece to keep your residency. So that's a real bonus as well. There's no physical presence requirement other than actually having to go there to get your biometrics done once. However, if you want to apply for a passport down the line or citizenship, you have to prove that you have physically lived in Greece for 5 years out of 7. So only after
Okay.
7 years are you eligible to apply, but you have to have lived there for 5. So again, you'll see that's why, from a South African client perspective, it isn't as popular if a client wishes to get the ultimate citizenship down the line.
Yeah. Okay. And
Mm,
when it says you have to have lived there for 5 years, is that at least 183 days a year in each of those 5 years, those type of thresholds?
It's more, it's permanent. So it's a
Oh,
full
wow.
5 years. Yes,
Okay. So this is really only for people who want to go to Greece.
exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and then the next one is the US EB5 program. So this has been around as well for many, many years. Unlike the other ones that I've just touched on, it has a higher physical presence requirement. So we advise most clients that, you've really got to have an ultimate aim of living in the US. Um, excuse me, to enter into the EB5 program. The minimum investment is 800,000 USD, and that is a passive investment. So it goes into something called a regional center. This regional center is a government-approved body again, and they have to employ a certain amount of people. I think it's 10 people per project per investor. So your 800,000 USD that you're investing has to go towards employing 10 people in the US. And again, this regional center company will manage it for you, but that's really the requirements. It's a passive investment and it's an at-risk investment. But as you would well know, tax is often something that, in the US, we're not tax advisors, which is of course why we work so closely with you. Yeah, US tax is something that often scares South Africans away from committing to this program.
And is this a program that, I mean, you own the investment, so can you sell it after a certain period, or must you maintain it, and can you expect to get income from it?
Good question. So yes, you can expect to generate some income from it, and yes, you can disinvest as well.
Okay.
So yeah, you do get the money back. So most of these programs, you get your investment back, unless of course you choose the donation
Donation
option.
route. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
otherwise.
is it right that people would go the donation option if they want to get a passport quicker, or is it just that the amount is lower?
Um, it's a little bit of a combination of both, because if you look at the Caribbean options, it's not significantly lower,
Yeah.
which is interesting. But we find with the Caribbean in particular that clients it's sort of a 50-50 split, and it really depends on their risk appetite. So, some clients say, look, I've got property all over. I'm not interested in having another property issue. Not that, I mean, it's a passive investment, but some people just are against it. And they say, I'd rather just donate, quick, easy, simple. Then there are those that say, why would I give away $230,000 if I can invest $270,000 and get it back after 5 years? So there really is a good 50-50 split in terms of clients opting for either or solution.
Interesting. And can you kind of talk us through what are the main risks or pitfalls people should be aware of when they're trying to decide which passport to go for, or which country to choose?
Absolutely, Keelan. I mean, yes, there are risks associated with this industry. One of the risks is that laws do change. We saw that happening, as I just mentioned, in Portugal when they took away the property option as an investor, not being able to do that anymore. There's also, for those of you that follow this industry, there's also recent whispers of them changing so when I spoke about the program and the requirement that you could apply for citizenship after 5 years, there's whispers that they're going to change that to 10 years. So
Okay, big change.
big change. And because it's actually part of the citizenship law, so it doesn't only apply to golden visa residents, it applies to all residents in Portugal that have, obtained it in whatever manner they have, with a pathway to citizenship. So everyone will be subject to now have to wait for 10 years. If, of course, they do make this change. It might be less, it might be 7, it might be no change, but it is causing a lot of noise again with regards to the Portuguese program. But these are things, as you asked about risks associated with these programs. Something else worth mentioning is the multi-citizenship option, which used
Was
to be a
very
very,
popular.
yes, exactly. So that would have been on my list if you asked me 6 months ago, what are our most popular programs? And multi-citizenship program was a very popular program for our ultra high net worth clients because it came at quite a high price tag. But recently, the program has been shut down, and that's because the European Court of Justice made a decision that Malta had to shut the program down. They didn't want to have the European nationality being commoditized. So, because there was a price tag associated with getting the Maltese citizenship, they made this ruling that it wasn't allowed. It was a ruling that was completely unexpected. Everyone was of the opinion that they wouldn't have the authority to make such a decision and impose such a decision on Malta, but it happened. So that program has been closed.
And
So
can I
that's
ask, Lisa, what happened? Like, was there a grandfathering provision? What happened to people who were in the waiting list and had made the investment by then?
so great question again. The Malta program worked in a couple of stages. So we, Henley and Partners, but obviously everyone who had clients in this position had clients at various stages of the process. So some had just started, some had applied for their residency card because that was the first step, and they were waiting for the citizenship to then apply for that. So the decision was made literally overnight, shut down the program. So what that meant is nobody knew other than, no one knew could apply. And slowly but surely, they're starting to unravel what that means. So there's still no absolute clarity on the way forward for all the applicants in the program. There is often a grandfathering period involved, but it's just establishing at what point that grandfathering comes in or not. So as we sit here today, there's still uncertainty as to which clients will be able to continue with the process because they reached a certain part in it, or the ones that definitely won't. So there's clients that we've advised, look, there's no option. You're too early in the program, and then there's those that are just being patient to see what will transpire with the program going forward.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is lots of complexity, lots of different requirements and benefits for each passport that will depend on the facts and circumstances of the client. And like with any legislative area, there's always the risk of change. So the key is to get good advice before deciding which program would make most sense for your specific circumstances.
Absolutely, Keelan. And I mean, this is one of the things that, being the global leaders in this industry, we're always very transparent and open and upfront with our clients, posing these questions about risks. And, we'll say absolutely there are risks. The Caribbean programs, for example, visa-free travel arrangements between countries can change. So
Yeah.
it's unlikely, and these programs have been around for decades, but yes, I guess, is the answer. There is some kind of risk involved.
And Lisa, from a kind of macro level, why do countries decide to offer passports? Like what are the benefits they're trying to achieve as a country?
So if you look at this industry, at the end of the day, governments are running their country like a business. So they are looking at getting inward investment into their countries, right? So in return for getting high net worth vetted individuals to invest into their country, they are happy to offer them a residence or citizenship in return. So there are a lot of these programs available out there. There's probably 100 or so programs, but not all of them are legitimate. Not all of them are actual formal, viable programs. We've heard of programs where funds are not seen to be going where they're supposed to go. So this again points to your point you raised earlier, why it's important for clients looking at entering into this space of a second residence or citizenship to approach a company like Henley Partners and engage with us, because we only offer those programs to our clients that are reputable, that you will get what you set out to achieve, that we know the funds that are being invested are legitimately going to government funds that are set up for the benefit of the country or their citizens. So I think a key point to note here is, if anyone listening is hears of a program or is interested to know if a program is legitimate or not, feel free to reach out and ask us, because I mean, there are over about 40 programs that we work with at Henley Partners, which are all legitimate programs. And if it's one that we don't work with, there's a
Probably a
reason.
reason.
Let's
Yeah.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, even for very high net worth individuals, it's a significant investment. It's a significant investment of time as well, and linkage to a country. So it's very important to get it right up front.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Lisa, what what can you tell us in terms of your thoughts of future trends? Like, what do you think we're going to see in terms of maybe new programs or new trends in citizenship by investment across the world?
Yeah, great question, because it is your questions are fantastic, by the way. Great. It's a changing industry. I mean,
Yeah,
I have been in the industry now for over 10 years, and it changes all the time. It may be small changes, it may be significant changes, but it's quite a dynamic industry. So, as I mentioned, we've seen a move away from the trend of being able to invest into property in Europe. That that has changed. That we seem to be moving away from. And the other thing that we are moving away from, it appears, is the commoditization of a passport, an EU passport. So the EU's been quite um, opinionated on this whole industry of European nationality being sold. So with this clampdown on the Malta program, we anticipate as a firm that the entire industry is moving towards more of a citizenship based on merit as opposed to by investment
yeah,
going going forward. So the residency programs are different because they require you to live there or spend time there. There's a 5-year or 10-year investment period. There's language tests. There's really showing links and that towards the country. whereas the citizenship programs, which really just involved a significant
Money.
outlay
Yeah.
of money,
Yeah.
um, is 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 going to be removed, and every country has under their citizenship law has a section which grants citizen or allows the government to grant citizenship based on merit.
Yeah.
And within Henley Partners, not only do we have a client advisory team, which advises clients on these options, but we also have a government advisory team. And our government advisory team is actually working with governments now, um, consulting on this topic of merit, and of expanding the merit citizenship offering as opposed to purely just based on investment of capital.
Okay, very interesting. So definitely a dynamic space. Lisa, thank you so much for that summary. It's been very helpful, very nice, succinct understanding of what the best options are, particularly for South Africans. Guys, we have a couple of minutes for questions and answers. Please feel free to write any questions in the chat. After this, we will send you the recording of our webinar and also the slides that we have shared, which includes Lisa's and my contact details. So you can also be in touch with either of us if you'd like to discuss anything further. But if you've any immediate questions for now, please raise your hand or put it in the chat. Otherwise, it seems like you've answered everyone's questions, Lisa, which is great. But otherwise, Lisa, thank you very much for this discussion. It's been very interesting for me because a lot of our clients are on the periphery interested in second passports. And I had heard a lot about Malta over the years and Portugal. So it's been very interesting to know what the changes there, particularly in terms of the Malta one being scrapped by the EU so suddenly.
Mm-hmm. Look, as I say, well, I love my job. It's an interesting area. It's a very topical industry, and people are always interested in it, whether they are directly looking at options or not. There's always somebody that's talking about it. I mean, I, for myself, am very fortunate that like you said, you've got an Irish passport. I don't have an accent to show I have a second citizenship, but I have got, two second citizenships, based on family birth and based my Austrian ancestry, and also that I lived in Australia for many, many years. So, I understand the benefits that comes with it, that I choose to be in South Africa because that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
If I want to leave or want to expand or my children want to leave, we've got the optionality. And that is what is just so comforting about having a
Having a
second
second passport. Yeah.
citizenship.
And I see that with my clients and my friends as well, both in South Africa and in Mauritius. Often it's for their children. They say, well, I'm happy living in South Africa. I've got a job or I've got my own business, but they want to have a second passport for their children to be able to easily move overseas if they want to.
Exactly. Absolutely. So
Great.
no, it's been a pleasure, and a pleasure working with you as always. And the tax question always does come up when we consult with clients. And for those of you in the audience, and we always do say, look, we are not tax advisors at Henley Partners, but we refer clients to, if they've obviously got their own tax advisors, but Caoilfhionn is great at assisting clients with tax structuring and advice that they might need to take on this venture.
Thanks, Lisa. We have one last minute, one last question just snuck in at the last minute. Any underrated options often overlooked across the 40 odd options? So any sort of black sheep that you think are worth a quick mention?
So yeah, interesting question. And something that has sort of popped up in terms of this whole change with the Malta option being taken away. and Henley and Partners close relationships with working with various governments around the world with these programs. We have got an option currently, which is actually exclusive to Henley and Partners, which is Albanian citizenship. And that is something that is a limited program. So it's only, I think it was 150 applications it started off with.
Wow.
We've had a second offering of it because it was so popular. But yeah, something that allows you, and this is an interesting one touching on this because it's a European country, right? So Albania citizenship. However, it's not an EU country currently, but they are an official candidate country for EU membership. So basically, you're getting into the Albanian program at a low price tag of around 200,000 euros, with the upside of it becoming a full-blown EU country in 5 years' time. And then you've really got yourself a really cheap way of
Yeah,
getting
getting an EU
into
passport.
an EU passport. I mean, but there's risks, there are the
Yeah.
risks that may not become an EU member, but everything is pointing towards that. So, so Carl, to answer your question, yes, that is one example of a program that is available. Latvia has a formal program, which is a reasonable or inexpensive entry into Europe. You're looking at about 60,000 euros for the Latvian program, but
Wow.
that's residency. So yeah, there's a lot of options. We obviously don't have time today to talk about all of them in detail, but if any of you have an interest, please feel free to reach out, and we'd happily consult with you and guide you through the different options.
And that's really the overall learning I'm taking from this. There's lots of options, and which one is the most suitable will depend on the specific person and what it is they and their family want long term.
Absolutely, Keelan, and that is key. We get people saying, "Oh, phone," or getting hold of us somehow saying, "I want to do the Portugal Golden Visa," and we'll always have a standard couple of questions that we ask them. What are your objectives? What is your family structure? What are you trying to achieve here?
Yeah.
Because those are all really important. That come into, the Portuguese Golden Visa isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
The kids' ages are important. So it really is important to consult with somebody who gives you good advice and bespoke advice.
Yeah.
And it's important, very important.
One of the things we often tell our clients in terms of structure is do it once and do it right, which means go to an expert and consider everything. And it sounds like exactly the same for this. You want to get your second passport once, but you want to make sure you're going for the best option.
Exactly, and that typically involves not cutting corners in terms of
Yes.
going with the cheapest service provider you can
Yeah,
find out
or
there.
asking ChatGPT, which so many people seems to think nowadays is it will do instead of advisors. Well, Lisa, thank you very much for this very insightful discussion. And guys, feel free to ask us any questions. You'll get our email addresses when we send the slides and the webinar. And thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone in the audience for attending. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, Keelan.